Hello everyone, and welcome to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about Magic, Commander, and anything else. Now, for the start of today's show, I do want to talk about some of the spoilers coming out in Double Masters 2022, but I need to preface that with the real reason I want to talk about Double Masters 2022, and that is the reprint of Concordant Crossroads. So, Concordant Crossroads is a single green for a world enchantment. All creatures have haste. Recently, it was included in a secret lair, which I, like many others, put in a pre-order for. But the rest of the contents of that secret lair were, well, lands. It was 3 more lands. So everyone that I talked to that did pre-ordered it specifically for the Concordant Crossroads. And I know some of them will keep those pre-orders because it's alt art, whatever. I had 5 pre-ordered and I canceled that order because I can spend less and get 5 of the alternate art Concordant Crossroads. So there is that. But I do want to go through a few of the cards that are getting reprinted, and that's kind of it for this first part. So first up we have Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, 10 mana Eldrazi. It's a 12/12. When you cast a spell, you draw 4 cards. It has Annihilator 4, and he's a shuffle Eldrazi, so when he hits the graveyard, you shuffle your graveyard into your library. And Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre, 11 mana, 10/10 Eldrazi. When you cast a spell, you destroy a permanent, indestructible, Annihilator 4, and the same shuffle Eldrazi thingamabob that the other one had. So I'm happy with these reprints because the Shuffle Eldrazi are always expensive, so just a few more in circulation is a good thing. Now on to a couple of white cards I'm happy to see reprinted. First up we have Smothering Tithe, 3 and a white enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If they don't, you make a treasure token. It's just one of the few ways that white decks can keep up with all the other colors. I know it's annoying, but again, it was something that white needed when it came out. I don't think we need more cards like this. Then we also have Teferi's Protection, 2 and a white for an instant. Until your next turn, your life total can't change. You gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. Exile Teferi's Protection. Again, another great way for white decks to be able to keep up with other decks, or well, it's just a good protection spell. This getting as many reprints as possible is great, so that it's not an $80 card like a card we'll get to when we get to red. Now, as far as blue reprints go, like with blue not really being my favorite color, I do have to give it its props with things like Consecrated Sphinx, 4 blue, 4/6 Sphinx, flying. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. And Mana Drain. It is 2 blue mana for an instant. Counter target spell at the beginning of your next main phase. Add an amount of colorless equal to the spell's mana value. Again, blue is not my preferred play style, but reprints are good. But getting into black. First up we have Bitter Blossom, 1 and a black for a enchantment. It's a tribal enchantment with the fairy subtype. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life and you make a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying. It's just a good reprint. I'm happy to see it. And then I guess I really can't mention black without mentioning Imperial Seal. It's a single black mana, it's a sorcery, search your library for a card, shuffle it, put the card on top, you lose 2 life. Yes, this is worse than Vampiric Tutor, but with this being like its really only real reprint, it's worth mentioning. Now we get into red, and, well, let's be honest, the red card that I wanted to talk about was our good friend, the Dockside Extortionist. 1 in a red for a 1/2 Goblin Pirate. When the Extortionist enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. I always forget the enchantment parts. So historically, this has been an $80 card because it was only in one commander deck. So any more of these in circulation is a good thing. I still think it needs like 3 more reprints. Yeah. And then, like, the rest of the, like, mono red stuff doesn't really stick out to me except for Warrior's Oath, which is red for a sorcery. Take an extra turn after this one. At the beginning of the turn's end step, you lose the game. This one's notable because, much like Imperial Seal, it was originally from Portal 3 Kingdoms. So again, something that had not seen many reprints, or any reprints. But into green, the first one we should mention is Allosaurus Shepherd. Single green for a 1/1 Elf Shaman. The spell can't be countered. Green spells you control can't be countered. And for 4 green, until end of turn, each elf creature you control has base power and toughness 5/5, and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other types. So yeah, that was only available in Jumpstart packs, and it's good to see it here. Next up, we have the Oracle of Moldaya. 3 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Shaman. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. You play with the top card of your library revealed, and you may play lands from the top of your library. This has been an expensive card because it had never seen a reprint from original Zendikar, so I'm just happy to see it here. Now, I don't really want to get too much into, like, the multicolored spells, so I'm not going to. I will say it's always nice to see the reprint of Crucible of Worlds, which is a 3-mana artifact that lets you play lands from your graveyard. Aether Vial, that's a cool reprint. It's a single mana artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on it, and then you can tap it to put a creature card with mana value equal to the number of charge counters on Aether Vial from your hand onto the battlefield. And I guess just finishing this off with a few more artifacts. Mana Vault, 1 mana artifact, doesn't untap during your untap step. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can pay 4. If you do, untap Mana Vault. At the beginning of your draw step, if it's tapped, it deals 1 damage to you, and it taps to add 3. Phyrexian Altar is 3 mana for an artifact. Sacrifice a creature, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Sensei's Divining Top is a single mana artifact. For 1, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put them back in any order, and then tap, draw a card, then put the top back on top of your library. Thrumming Stone is a 5 mana legendary artifact. With spells you cast have Ripple 4, so whenever you cast a spell, you reveal the top 4 cards of your library, and then you can cast spells with the same name as the card that you cast without paying their mana costs. And we'll round it out in the artifacts with Vidalcan Orrery, 4 mana artifact. You may cast spells as though they had flash. And then our last thing to talk about is, well, lands. Mostly Cavern of Souls. When it enters, you choose a creature type, it adds colorless, or you can add 1 mana of any color, spend that mana only to cast a creature spell with the chosen type, and the spell can't be countered. And City of Brass. It's a land that whenever it becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to you, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color. Alright, yeah. So that gets us through our things that we're happy to see from Double Masters 2022. Alright, and I will be Right back with the second part of this, where we're continuing our little series on my decks versus other decks. And I'll be right back. Hey, I just want to take a minute to tell you about my Patreon. I know times are hard for everybody, and I know it isn't easy to shuffle around bills and stuff. Believe me, I know that. But if you would like to help support the podcast and me, you can find the links to my Patreon in my link tree, which is always put into the description of either the video or the audio, wherever you're listening to it. It would really mean the world to me. Honestly, I'm just struggling to make ends meet most weeks. But that's it. That's all. If you want to help, the links will be where you can find them. Welcome back. Now, the first part of this went a little longer than I intended, but we will get right into our second part, where we're going through some of my decks and comparing them to EDH Rec's average deck list for the same commanders. And today we are looking at Linden the Steadfast Queen, 3 white mana for a 3/3 human noble with vigilance. Whenever a white creature you control attacks, you gain 1 life. I took this in a much different direction than what their average deck list would suggest. But getting into it, the average CMC of my deck is 2.67. The average CMC of theirs is 3.12. I have 27 white producing sources. They have 34. We both have 4 colors producers. And in the full breakdown, I have 30 lands and they have 33. Now, our common lands that we're both running include Castle Ardenvale, Aganjo Seat of the Empire, Emeria the Skyrune, and War Room. And the only non-basic that they are running that I am not is Myriad Landscape. But I lean a little more into fetch lands to help keep my need for more mana sources lower. So I am running Arid Mesa, Flooded Strand, Marsh Flats, Windswept Heath, and Fabled Passage. And one of the other biggest differences is that my deck runs 0 sorceries, where theirs runs 5, 4 of which being board wipes, which are Austere Command, Farewell, Fumigate, and Mass Calcify. Now, we do have some similarities, and some of those do overlap in the things that care about life gain. Those include Archangel of Thune, Resplendent Angel, Sarah Ascendant, Heliod Suncrowned, and Dawn of Hope. But then after there, it really diverges, where they're running things like Ajani's Strength of the Pride, Heliod's Intervention, Ajani's Welcome, Angelic Accord, Cleric Class, Sigarda's Splendor, the Book of Exalted Deeds, and Well-Lost Dreams. I'm leaning more into aggro and creatures and things that help my creatures. So things like Sarah Avenger, Archetype of Courage, Intrepid Adversary, Luminarch Aspirant, Bygone Bishop, Brima's King of Oreskos, and Offensive Country Spirit, Honor of the Pure, and Glorious Anthem. Now, I can't necessarily say what their average decklist endgame is because, well, I've never played it. But just looking at it, it still has some aggro to it, but I feel like mostly it's just going to be padding your life total until you find something like the Felidar Sovereign and try and win that way. Whereas my endgame revolve around cards like Odric Master Tactician, Odric Luminarch Marshal, Achroma Vision of Ixidor, Elish Norn Grand Cenobite, Achroma's Memorial, and Dolmen Gate. Because my whole game plan is to always have something in play, constantly swinging, hitting people, lowering life totals, padding my own with Linden for the crackbacks. And yeah. I think the The biggest thing here is seeing that I did not build Linden the way most people would think to build Linden. And that's why Linden is kind of one of my signature decks at this point. But getting into the mana curve, looking at mana curves of 0 to 7, or mana values of 0 to 7, my Linden list is running 1 0-drop, where theirs is running 0. I have 15 1-drops, they have 11. I have 18 2-drops, they have 14. I have 21 3-drops, they have 17. I have 9 4-drops, they have 13. I have 2 5-drops, they have 6. I have 1 6-drop, they have 5. I have 3 7-drops, they have 1. But my 7-drops are 7-drops that are going to win the game. And I intentionally have the bulk of my deck at 1, 2, and 3 mana because the deck needs to work with only 3 mana. Anything past that is gravy. Like, as long as I can play a 1, a 2, and a 3-drop, and continuing to play up to 3-drops, that is the majority of my deck. Yeah. That's kind of the breakdown, and I also kind of want to keep this bit on the shorter side because the first half went a little longer than I intended. And yeah, as far as Linden goes, she is my baby. I don't see me taking her apart anytime soon, even though I have, 3 other mono white decks. They all kind of do their own thing. Linden is my aggro white deck. Like, just play small creatures, turn them sideways, beat face. And, she was kind of the first deck I built to prove that mono white was not as handicapped as everyone said it was. And I think I've proven that point. But yeah, as far as that, and as far as the Double Masters 2022 that I will not be buying any sealed product for because that's way too damn expensive. Yeah, I think that's going to be it for this week. So I hope you all have a good one. Try and keep yourself occupied. And I will see you next time. Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.